Welcome to Informatica University. My name is John Lira, and in this demonstration, part of the Informatica Power Center Administration course is I want to talk about domain management. And I'll tell you what that means in a moment. And we're going to be talking about the domain and the metadata repository where the users and groups reside, some system tables, and then knowing how to shut down and rename the domain and bring it up again. Now this is serious. You don't want to do this too lightly. The reason is if you don't do the steps in the right sequence or alter things incorrectly, the domain, the gateway domain, may not be able to come back again. So let me just go quickly into Oracle. I have already brought up SQL Developer, and notice that we have various schemas here. Now throughout our class and other demos, we have been concerned about the metadata repositories that developers have used, where the workflows reside, where the mappings reside. So we have, in other demos, learned how to back it up, how to copy it, how to run objects in it through Workflow Manager, etc. The schema we're concerned about now is the domain, where the information for the domain is. So again, we're looking at the domain metadata repository, and let me just point to it. Here it is. This is the domain metadata repository, DOM dev test. Recall that when you install the product, you were asked, when you were installing Informatica, it said, would you like to create a domain or join one? We had answered, let's create one. And then this is the name we gave it. So this was created, the contents were created during the installation. The schema existed before installation. So DOM dev test existed, but the contents, if you allow me to look at the tables, all this inside of it, all that is what was created when we installed the product. And as you can see, a lot of it is not something meaningful for us. ISP, there's quite a bit of tables that just don't mean much to us. Okay, so you can see that we have various tables. Let's see if there's any views here. Notice that we have various views, etc. And so what you have here is all the metadata. Now, notice that I also have another domain schema, DOM dev test. This one should be empty. So one of the things I will try to attempt is, let's assume that we need to rename the domain from DOM dev test to DOM dev test 2. Notice the schema exists, so how will we switch over? Now, I am going to do this in the same node. In real life, this makes better sense if we were actually, say, going from a development to a production environment and we need to recreate the domain, or we had problems, something went wrong and we had a backup and now we need to recover and recreate the domain. So I'm going to do this in the same node, but in practice, it'd probably be better if we had separate nodes. So DOM dev test is an empty schema. DOM dev test is what I've created. Let me now show you the administrator console, and notice that in the admin console you have the domain DOM in dev test. It says session expired. Let me log back in and logging back into the administrator console, and looking at the domain here. Notice the domain is domain in dev test. Don't confuse the domain name with the schema of where all the domain data is stored. So the domain name is DOM in dev test, and if you look at the properties of it, you can see that it is connected to the DOM underscore dev test, which is the Oracle username and schema. And it is also on a machine called node01 infa dev test. So we only have one machine, so that's where it's stored. At the left-hand side, when you click on the node, you'll see its actual name, infa dev test, and the port number. All this information that you're seeing me click on is stored in the domain metadata repository. When I go to logs, monitor reports, and security, these users, these groups